Hi there again, welcome back to the Ivory Tire Collections. I've got a cool review of a new homebrew game I just got before Christmas, and I don't believe I've actually done a review for a game on this particular system yet, which is strange because of all the systems I have in my collection, this is probably the one I have the most games for. So anyway, let's get right to it. And I'm not going to tell you the system, by the way, because yeah, we'll get to that. But here is the game right here, the homebrew. It is the game Draconian. And if you can't tell based on the label or based on the graphics of the box, it's based off of an original arcade game that came out in the early 80s, released under Midway and Namco, known as Bosconian. And yeah, so this is a remake or a reimagining of Bosconian on this particular system. It was originally programmed by Daryl Spice, as well as a collaboration of other programmers for different parts of the game, such as the artwork you see and the music and graphics within the game, as well as the level designs, and released under the AtariAge publishing here. And like all AtariAge boxed releases, this is a great box. I love the artwork on this. But again, I'm not going to tell you the system yet. If you're already familiar with this game or this particular homebrew and its development, then this will not be a surprise. But for some of you that may not know about it or don't follow the homebrew development scene much, then yeah. Anyway, so let me tell you the basic premise of the game, which will make the gameplay footage that I show here in a little bit easier to understand. You're basically the lone spaceship sent out to defend your home galaxy from an invading alien race that has set up these battle stations, multiple battle stations within the different 5 quadrants of your galaxy. And each quadrant consists of multiple levels within it. At least like up to 16 different stages, I think, in each quadrant. I've played them over and over and over, and they do eventually repeat. But anyway, so basically the way it works is you fly around within the quadrant searching out for the enemy battle stations. At the same time, the enemy battle stations are sending out their armaments and their weapons to find you. And your goal as the lone ship here is to take out the battle stations within each quadrant, or within each sector of a quadrant, I should say, to advance on to the next sector where, of course, the difficulty increases. So the way you take out the battle stations is they have a central reactor core that will open up from time to time to allow the space station to cool off. And that is your opportunity when you're flying near them to launch a shot into the central opened reactor core to blow up the battle station. Your ship has the ability to fire from both the front and the rear very quickly. So yeah, that's the basic premise of the game. Fly around, find the battle stations, take them out, go on to the next quadrant or next sector of the quadrant. Everything increases and gets difficult from there. So let me show you some gameplay footage. So Draconian, like a lot of other titles released by Daryl Spice of Spiceware, has a wonderful title screen with lots of different options. You can select your starting quadrant, which again, you have 5 quadrants using Greek lettering. So you can choose the starting quadrant and the starting sector, at least up to sector 16. Now there are more than 16 sectors in each quadrant. You can also specify the beginning level for the enemies. So there's a kids option, which is good for just that, for little guys, and then easy, normal, and hard. The game defaults on normal. And like a lot of other Spiceware titles, it's really set up for any television type, for any country. So by default on mine here, it specifies, or it starts off with NTSC, of course, but you can also specify the PAL format if you wish. You'll notice the color changes on my particular TV here when I do that. And then it will remember the last score from the last game, as well as the overall high score in the game. Now, it doesn't store them to the cartridge, but it does remember that at least between power cycles on the system. So that's really cool. So anyway, let's just get started here, and I'll play the game, and you can kind of get an idea of how it works, and see if you can tell me what system it's for. Okay, so have you figured out what system this is for yet? It's probably not a huge secret, especially if you follow the homebrew community at AtariAge at all, or if you keep up with new developments. And obviously the fact that it is published by AtariAge gives you some sort of a clue. Believe it or not, everything that you just witnessed with the all the different enemies or sprites on the screen, and the cool colors and the speech, all of that you just witnessed, including somewhat of a pseudo parallax scrolling, all of that you just witnessed being played on an Atari 2600. Yes, Draconian is an Atari 2600 game, and that blows my mind. It's got all the things I just mentioned, speech and all those enemies on the screen at once, all these different options that you can choose. It's got an amazing amount of different levels to it, and I don't know if you could tell in the video or not, but the gameplay can get absolutely frantic, which is not a problem. So I'm going to play another round here, and this time I'm going to make it a little easier for myself so that I can describe what's going on and make it a little easier to understand. But anyway, so yeah, let me play a quick round and kind of tell you what I'm doing along the way. So obviously the game starts. Now you can't tell, but that speech actually said blast off. And it says alarm, alarm whenever you get close to one of the battle stations. Now these spaceships that look like they're coming after me are actually supposed to be enemy missile weapons. The blue spiky balls are mines that had been laid by the enemy. And then of course the brown nodules there are asteroids. And the cool thing about this is you can lure the enemies into the asteroids and mines. Now, the speech is to clue you in on different things that are taking place. Whenever you get next to the battle stations, that's when it'll say battle stations, and occasionally you hear red alert or something to that effect, and that indicates that there's an enemy squadron. Yeah, alarm, alarm. That will indicate that there's an enemy squadron coming after you. Now, actually, that's when it says, yeah, battle station. So now there's an enemy formation, which if you take out the lead ship, always in red, then the rest of the formation will break up. Otherwise, they follow you and home in on you. Okay, so in each quadrant, we have the battle stations are laid out differently, and there's two ways to take them out. You can either destroy it by taking out all of the modules that surround the space station, all the segments, like that, but that's the hard way to do it. Or you can do it quickly, wait for the central reactor core to expose itself, and then hit the center of the battle station to destroy it. Now in the lower right hand corner, there is a little square section with little blinky dots in it. That's actually a radar, which shows me the location. The solid white dots are the location of the remaining battle stations. And the blinking white dot there that was in the corner, there we are, the blinking white dot is me. That's my relative position of my spaceship. So you kind of have to keep your eye on the radar to kind of see where the enemy is at. And as well as watching everything else that's happening on the screen. Dodge the mines, dodge the asteroids, and take out all the space stations, or all the battle stations, however you want to call them. So here we are in this section. This one's kind of cool because they're all lined up for me. So if I just kind of go up in a straight line like this, that sound indicates I got an extra man. Okay.
Now on the asteroids, you can take them out and you're okay. The debris from them is fairly safe, but on the mines, you have to be careful because you can get splash damage if you run into their debris field. I got shot by that battle station. Now the first couple of levels are pretty easy. You only have a few battle stations. The enemies aren't too aggressive yet. And the battle stations only shoot at you occasionally. But as you go and advance through more and more sectors, you will find that the battle station count will increase quite a bit per sector. The enemy weapons will become much more aggressive, and here we go. Occasionally, the reactor cores can only be shot from the side instead of directly up and down, like you see here. The screen wraps around, so if you go from one side on the radar to the, if you go all the way to the edge on the radar, you'll end up on the opposite side, as I'm trying to do there. I've already wrapped around. And that's handy to remember that. It does that both from left to right as well as up and down. And again, that's important to remember because sometimes it's quicker to just wrap around the screen to get to the other battle stations. So don't forget that the screen does wrap around. As an example, it looked like I was way far away from the battle stations there a second ago because I was at the bottom of the screen, and they're at the top. But the reality is, if I just move myself down, I'm actually closer that way because, again, it wraps around.
All right, so that's Draconian for the Atari2600 from Daryl Spice of Spiceware and published by AtariAge. So let's talk real quick about the contents of the boxed version because that's actually pretty cool in and of itself. So the game comes with quite a few things. Obviously, you get the game itself, which AtariAge recently has started to use these cardboard inserts, these little trays to set the games in, which is really cool. It still allows the game to be popped out pretty easily while also keeping it in place inside the box. The cartridge itself, like all of AtariAge's other releases, is excellent. You also get a poster of the artwork featured on the box, which is really cool. It's a really neat poster, really neat artwork. You can actually see a little bit more of the full artwork versus what's on the box, kind of, because it's in better detail. You can tell the enemy weapons are actually like missiles that are following you here and such. And then, of course, you get the instruction manual as well. And I actually absolutely love this instruction manual. First time I saw it, I was like, why does this look so familiar? What's so odd about this? And then it finally dawned on me, of course, that if you're paying attention and you're familiar with it, it basically has been made to mimic a Haynes or a Chilton's technical guide, like on a vehicle, like on your car. So the whole manual is kind of written out like that styling, which is really fun. And the manual is, the paper quality is excellent. So, you know, like anything else, gives you the basic backstory, controls, tells you about the radar that I was mentioning earlier when I was playing the game, different enemy formations that can show up. And then, of course, it describes the enemies themselves, talks about the space stations or the battle stations, hazards such as the mines and the asteroid rocks. Yeah, and then, of course, the scoring is laid out, as well as the credits, which is something you never saw in original Atari manuals or games back in the day, because Atari didn't like to give their programmers credit. But, yeah, this actually, Draconian is, like I said, it's a collaborative effort of multiple programmers. You know, Daryl Spice did the bulk of the programming of the core, kernel, etc. Sound effects and music and the voices were done by Mike Haas. Graphics designed by Nathan Strum, who's also done lots of the graphics for some of the artwork for a lot of the other releases. So, yeah, just some great stuff here. Also additional programming by Chris Walton. And the label and manual design is also by Nathan Strum. So, yeah, Nathan did some great work on this. And so what are my final thoughts on Draconian for the Atari2600? Well, I think it's pretty obvious based on how much I've been gushing talking about it. The game is great. I absolutely think it is a must-buy. Even if you don't normally buy homebrews, I definitely think you should buy Draconian. If for no other reason, it's based off of a really cool arcade game that came out back in the day that didn't really get any home releases back then. So it's great. The artwork, not only on the cartridge, but the graphics within the game are really detailed. I love how many space stations you can actually have appear on the screen at once, plus enemies, plus the background scrolling of the stars and the hazards with the mines and the asteroids. You can have all of that on the screen at once, and there's very little flicker. It's incredible. Obviously there's some flicker, but it's amazing how much actually can be put into the screen at once with no slowdown. Obviously the sound is really cool. There's not any real music to speak of other than just when you first start a level and end a level and obviously the game over. But it doesn't really need it. But the rest of the sound effects are really good. The explosion sounds are really nice. And of course it's got the speech. Now obviously the speech can be hard to hear and understand, and I'll be honest, with the exception of blast off and battle stations and alert, there's really not a whole lot else. I couldn't really tell what the other voices were, and I had to look that up in the manual. But yeah, this is if a game like this had come out back in the day, I don't know. It's hard to describe how things might have been different. But if nothing else, I can easily say that Draconian would probably be in most people's top 10 games of all time if it had actually come out back in the day, either with its original name of Bosconian or with Draconian. This is a great game. I do highly recommend it, and even if you can't get it boxed, buy it with just the cartridge and manual from AtariAge. Do it. I really don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a really fun game. So yeah, highly recommended.